So this is kind of just our agenda for the day, what we're going to kind of go through. It is a lot of material, but like I said, some of it we won't get too in depth with. So obviously the first thing on our agenda is a CMA. We all know that that's extremely important to be sure that you've priced the house properly, to be sure you've shown them, comparables to their house, why you feel it should be priced where it is. So everybody's probably comfortable with doing that, I'm assuming. If not, reach out, let us know. We can always hold how to prepare a CMA class and get into depth with that. That's kind of a class all on how to price the house and stuff like that. So we won't get too into that. So I guess the big thing about what we're going to talk about today is preparation. So preparing a listing, it's extremely important that everybody is prepared when you're taking on a listing. Some people think that listing is just so much easier than working with buyers. It can be, and it cannot be. If you're not prepared, it can be bad, and you can certainly help the sale of your listing by making sure that you're prepared and that you've prepared your clients. So the next thing on the list for preparing a listing is having discussions with your sellers, making sure that they understand what the process is. Some of your clients are going to have sold a million times. Some of them may never have sold. And even the ones that have sold a lot, things change. I've had so many clients that sold, 20 years ago. And when I go in and explain the way things work now, they're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of stuff has certainly changed. So be sure that even if they are seasoned and they've done this before, that you explain some of the new procedures. Sorry, guys. I guess certain things that you want to discuss with them would include, closing date, to discuss it with your clients. When do you want to close? Where are you going? Are you buying a new house and you're hoping to make this, I want to close on my house, move into the next house, which would then get into, are they going to bridge? Do they want to close on the house that they're purchasing, a week early so they have time to move out? Are they getting to an apartment? Do they have any idea? Like, you need to have all of those discussions with your clients. And the other really important discussion to have with them are days on market, so that you don't give them any kind of false expectations that you're going to put their house in the market and it's going to sell in a day. I mean, we all know right now we're in a market where that's happening a lot, but not to everything, not to every house, not to every specific area. So, make sure that you discuss that with them and tell them how long they can expect to be on the market, how many showings they can expect, how viewings work, when they can expect feedback. Am I going too fast, or is everybody fine?
All good.
All good? Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So those are all extremely important processes and things to explain to them. Same with the closing day. I know it's something I get asked all the time. I've created kind of an email sheet that I'll send to them. And then some of them I have to go and sit with them and explain that on closing, this is how it's going to work. You kind of need to be out of the house the day before. So if you've agreed to a closing date of, June 30th, you really need your client to understand that they really need to be out of the home on the 29th. They need to be ready for a closing on the 30th. Also things like reminding them you need to disconnect your power. You're going to have to, if you're on city water, you're going to have to disconnect your city water. All of those things are really important to go through with them. Maybe not on your initial listing appointment, but you want them to know that they're paying you a percentage for your knowledge, and to walk them through the entire process, which can be very long. Changing your address, there's a ton of things that it's your responsibility to make sure that they understand, so that when that time comes, they were like, wow, she really told me everything. She didn't miss a step. I was ready to go. So once you've went to the property and you've priced the property, and you've discussed what they should expect, you're going to look the property up on Property Online. Probably, if you've all done a listing, you've probably all done it. There's some specific things when you look up the property on Property Online that you're looking for. You're looking to make sure that the people you met with are the people who are registered on title. Sometimes it can happen where, I guess my best example is someone's passed away. So it's an elderly, person and they're like, well, no, you know, my husband's name's, you know, you pull it up on Property Online and see that the husband's name is still there, even though you know that he's passed. That can be a difficult conversation to have, but you do have to, because if his name's still there, then you need to make sure that your client discusses that with the lawyer to be sure that that, you know, is going to be removed, or that someone has the death certificate. Otherwise, you know, you're going to run into problems, and you don't want to do that once you're listed. You want to know ahead of time that this is something that's going to need to be done. The other thing is sometimes with younger, well, I shouldn't say with younger, sometimes, I guess from my experience with younger generation, there's a third person on there and you pull it up and you're like, oh, you know, it's usually a family member or something. You know, maybe they didn't tell you, maybe they didn't even realize that by having their mother or father co-sign it, that means that they're on the title too, and that their permission is required to sell that property. We need their signature. You know, so those are the things that you're kind of looking for. Property Online is also going to give you easements, restrictions, restrictive covenants. Sometimes it'll give you mortgage information. I say sometimes because sometimes, and maybe it's me, sometimes I cannot find mortgage information for specific properties. Sometimes you can, but it is good to know when you're having those financial discussions. It's good for you to be aware that, you know, there's two mortgages, or, you know, they have a line of credit attached to it as well. So it'll give you a good idea as to where they are financially, and you can have those discussions. Any questions about Property Online? I can't hear you very well.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Everybody's good? Okay. So the next thing that you can do is look the property up on the PVSC. And this is something, well, it's a little bit newer to me. I don't know if it's newer to anybody else, but I'm going to just, I'm just going to share it here. Just give me 1 sec. Little box always wants to get right in my way. Okay, so this is the PVSE, the Property Evaluation Services. So I don't know, is everybody muted, or does everybody hear the feedback?
I'm muted, but I can hear, I think somebody's not muted.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, good. It's not just me. I feel like I'm hearing somebody's news. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Yay. Thank you. Okay, so this is the Property Evaluation Services page. And you can look up the property and get some useful information in here. And it's nothing, you don't have to register for it. It's just public knowledge. Anybody can go on and use it, not just realtors. You'd go over here to find an assessment. I think you have to, here we go, sorry, search by address. I'm just going to use a property I recently sold. So then I would put that in here. So, okay, and then search. Now it's going to make you agree to the, oh, no, it didn't make me this time. Okay, so this is their assessment here, current assessed value. And if I click on view details, there. So it gives me the land size. It doesn't have a sale price, but sometimes it does. If someone bought more recently, it would have the sale price and the sale date. So that's, you know, good for you to have. It gives the current property assessment as well as the taxable assessment that we're going to get the taxes for. And then down here a little further, it gives you more information. You know, it gives you the year it was built, which sometimes they're like, geez, I don't know when it was built. So this can be very, very helpful. Number of baths, garage, no. Finished basement, no. So in this case, it did have a finished basement. It did have 2 bathrooms. So this is kind of just a gauge for you. It's not necessarily accurate. It's obvious that, you know, no one had been back in the home, right? It is a bungalow, so they would consider that. But I think the thing that I like the best about this is the year built. I think from my takeaway from it is that's what I like about it. If you haven't been to the property, I'm sure we all do a Google search of the property before we go, just so we know where we're going, what it looks like. And this isn't a bad thing to do, before going to do a listing as well. So that's that. Now let me see if I can get back. Oh, that's not it. This little box at the top really causes me grief. There, okay. Okay, so any questions about that website? No, everybody's good? Okay, you guys are really easy. Okay, so the next thing is measuring a home. If we've all done listings, I'm sure we've all at this point measured a house. The big thing from a broker's perspective, the big no-no is don't use a previous agent's measurements. I'm sure you've been to appointments where your client's even going to say, oh, I've got the listing cut from when I bought. You can just use that. You don't need to measure. No, you can't. You have to measure. When you put those measurements up on MLS, you are verifying that you did them and that they're accurate. So you don't want to take someone else's opinion. So it's very, very important that you measure the home yourself. You guys may all be familiar with this, but on the dashboard here, on our Paragon dashboard, down at the bottom under resources, there is this here, how to measure a property correctly. So if you ever are unsure, it's not a bad thing to run back through. There's a few other great videos if you go into the training hub that can be useful, but how to measure a property. If you're ever questioning it or you're not sure about certain things, that's a great video to watch to show you. Does anyone have questions about how to measure a property? No, you guys are so quiet. Okay, so next thing would be booking photographers, videographers, if you're doing any of that kind of stuff. You'd want to discuss that with them, but you've probably already discussed that with them when you were doing your value prop, when you went to present your CMA. It may be something you do, it may be something you don't do. It may be something that you ask them to pay extra for, or, that's completely up to you. We'll just move on from that one. There's not much more to that. Requesting from the sellers. Okay, so to me, this whole G area here, this is so important. So important. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where, your clients are interested in the home and they really want to see the tax bill. They really want to know how much the heating is. And you contact that agent and, oh, sorry, we don't have any of that. Oh, I'm gonna have to call my client, see if I can get it. Oh, they have to call 411 because they can't find their taxes. Like, I can't stress how important it is to make sure you have all of that information before you list. I have a sheet that I use. I'm still old school paper person, that I take with me, and I check my sheet off when I'm with them. I have a sheet that I would email to them or give to them initially and say, should you choose to list with me, this is the information I'm going to ask you for. I need you to start looking for it, because some of them it's going to take them a week to find it. We do have the Nova Scotia Power form, as well as I think there's one for oil too, that you can use. So all you really need is their account numbers. So I'm very specific in what I'm asking them for. The other thing too is if they're relocation, you should get their D&D number. I know that's not on there, but that's important too, just in case you ever require it, or you can send it to the lawyer. That's something else that you would want to make sure you have. Sometimes included in the information I'll need, I will explain to them that we're going to fill out a disclosure statement, the PDS, and just tell them, like, if there's any upgrades that you've done to the home, please, gather that information up. Doesn't necessarily need to be receipts, but let them pick their own brain prior to you sitting with them. It does say any upgrades done to the home. So make sure you have that discussion with them, to me, prior to going to collect it all, right? You want to have all of those documents. It's so important. Then you're ready to go, right? Then you're absolutely ready to go. No question. If an agent says, I need this, I need that, you've got it. It shows that you're serious, that you're organized, and that it shows that your clients are serious about selling, that they've went through the prep work to make sure that they can give you everything that you may need if you're interested in their house. So we don't need to, I don't think, go through every little thing. Of course, the restrictive covenants is something that you can get. Sometimes, well, most times, when you go to a listing, they don't even know if there's restrictive covenants, right? So that's something that you can pull up. So that's great. Sometimes location certificates are on there as well. So I would usually go through that myself, to go through property online and see what is there. And tell them, look, online is registered your restrictive covenants, don't need you to worry about that. Lease information is also very important, because they will need to get a copy of if it's a propane lease from Wilson's, they're going to have a form that Wilson's is going to require that potential buyer to fill out. So you want to make sure you have all of those documents when, before you list the property, before you make it active on MLS. The rare time that they say, well, I did call about the taxes, they said they'd email them to me in 24 hours. Okay. Maybe that's not so bad, but at least they've started the process. Probably no questions about that. That's pretty straightforward. Showing instructions and preparing your clients for showings. That's going to come in to effect as to your value prop, in my opinion, as well. Things like staging, things like depersonalizing it, things like leaving the lights all on, things, explaining to them whether you as the agent have chosen to only allow 30-minute viewings or whether they're booked for an hour, that your clients should probably leave just before the hour. Don't leave, if your showings from 1 to 2, don't leave at 1, leave just a little bit before 1. And if they come back and they're still there and they've taken a little longer, just take a little loop around the neighborhood. Stuff like that, explaining all of that to them. I guess with showing instructions, I'm going to lump in feedback. If you guys have had listings before, we have all kinds of different types of clients, and some of them will message you when they get home after that 1 to 2 showing at 2 and be like, so what was the feedback? And you're like, well, we don't get feedback quite that quickly. Sometimes, it could be, I always prepare my clients that if I don't get feedback within a 24-hour period, then we request it. And if you're using showing time, then they get the automatic requests sent to them. The odd time, you still don't get it. I think there's 5, I think showing time sends 5 requests. There's times that you still don't get it. So I would prepare them for that feedback's given in a reasonable time frame, just so that they're not, calling you 6 times and emailing you, blowing up your phone saying, where's my feedback? It can take a little bit of time. So I'd put that in there. Obviously you'll need a key and a lockbox. Some places, I think more so in the Valley, don't use a lockbox. They use the, I don't know, I'm not sure what their technical name is. They're the little blue things that you have to put a little code in. So, you want to make sure you have a key. I think the only thing I would say about that is make sure the key works. If you've had to go get one cut, I would test it, because there's times when you can go get keys cut. I'm sure I've had keys cut for the same house like 6 times. And I'm like, my God, like none of these work. So just be sure that you do that. Be sure that, where you're having the person enter the home, maybe your clients use the back door. Maybe the mudroom's there, garage is there, whatever. That's how they prefer to go in the house. You may want to consider having these potential buyers enter by the front door. It's a first impression thing. And you want to have those discussions with your clients and prepare them that this is why you want them to do it. You're the professional. This is a great entrance you have here, those kind of things. So just make sure that when you get the key works. So any questions yet? No. Okay, good. So the next part of this is more about actually drafting, the offer. We're going to go through a seller brokerage designated agreement, just so if you guys have questions when we're going through the actual agreement, like just unmute and fire away. MLS or exclusive. Sometimes as brokers, we do get a lot of questions around it. Exclusive can mean a lot of different things. You could use it for a lot of different reasons. One might be that you go and you've competed and they've said they wanted to list with you. If you don't have your agreement, your SDBA signed, they could change their mind overnight and be like, oh, we're sorry, so-and-so we changed our mind. We're going to list with this guy. So that's one reason that you might want to, have the agreement signed exclusively. And making sure if you do it for that reason, that in your additional area, you're putting in that you're not advertising the property yet. So you want to make sure you did that. Another reason you might use exclusive is because, the painter's not finished till next week. But, you do have some really nice outside pictures and, you want to, like it said there, coming soon, or, just to gather excitement around it. You might want to list it exclusive for that reason. Most of the time though, we're probably using MLS. And if you do go exclusive for a reason, just that they're not quite ready, then, you're going to want to either you're going to have to do an amendment to put your MLS date, or you could put it right in. So if you go to them and they say, well, the painter will be done, no, we're ready. We'll list it exclusive on Monday, but by Friday, we're ready to go. Then you're going to want to put it right in your agreement that this listing will switch to MLS effective and put your date. If you don't do that, then in order to go MLS, you just do an amendment to it and state that it's now going to be an MLS listing. Any questions about exclusives or MLS? No, you guys really just don't have a lot of questions today.
Sorry, what's a quick definition of exclusive listing?
A quick definition?
Yeah.
Exclusive means you're not on MLS. So your client is not going to find themselves on Viewpoint, which we all know they like, or Realtor Link. So it's exclusive to you. I'm going to just pull up the SDBA just so I can show you. In your SDBA, it'll say whether or not you choose to cooperate or not to cooperate. So you could exclusive list it and say you're not cooperating with other brokerages. Or you may not. But the long and short of what you're going to explain to your client would be that if you list it exclusive, they're not on MLS. So they're not going to get the visibility. And they may choose to do that solely because they're not quite ready yet. You can still put a picture out there. You can still put a sign up. If you put your sign up, one thing to remember is that your signs, all of our signs, would have the MLS logo on them. So if you were to choose to list the property exclusive for a temporary period of time, then you need to make sure you cover that, because that's your MLS rules. And actually, just while I say MLS rules, if you are on your dashboard down here under governing documents, it doesn't hurt to read the rules and regulations. If you click on it and open it, there is areas where it'll explain everything to you. So if you're ever stuck, if you're ever bored, if you want some nighttime reading, print it off or pull up your computer. It will answer a lot of different questions that you might not have thought about. So let me go back to the SDBA here. So any other questions around that, around MLS or exclusive? Okay. So this is our SDBA, and what we have on our agenda is just to kind of talk about best practices. So obviously, you're going to put your seller's name and address. Keep in mind that the home they're selling may not be their address. So you want their address. This isn't where you'd put just the property address. Maybe it's an investment property and, they live on Smith Street and they're selling one on George Street. You want their address where they live. This is their information. You probably are all aware, but you are required to put a phone number and email. If anything was to ever happen, that the brokerage, that Keller Williams, needed to get in touch with your client, something happened to you, anything, then we have to have that there. So then down here, you're going to fill in the property that they're selling, which again could be different. Their PID number, which you'll get that from Property Online when you go on there and search. I don't think we need to go through putting the price in. It's pretty. That's a pretty standard one. You don't want to forget that. The designated agent section, it can never, and from time to time we do see it, it can't be blank. We're designated agency, so it has to be designated. You have to put your name in there. If you're on a team, keep in mind that it has to have the team name and every person on the team. I know some of the larger teams would have a schedule, and that's fine. Under there, you would just put your name and then you put to see the schedule. That's fine. Actually, there's a spot there as a designated see addendum. I'm not on a team, so that's, you know, important to fill out, and it's important that you go through this with your client, that you know, they're not just signing it. Some of the other areas here, your for sale sign. So again, if you did decide to list it exclusively, you do have to keep in mind that you have to cover that MLS logo. And then effective date. Your effective date, it can't be backdated, so keep that in mind. You can't, your effective date can be in the future, but it can't be in the past. So if you're signing the agreement, and some people would choose to sign the agreement and not worry about the fact that they could get, you know, maybe you're going to go MLS in 3 days, but you're signing it, you know, you're signing it Monday, but you're not going to go to MLS until Wednesday. That's fine. Your effective date would be the date that you're going to be MLS. And of course, down here under type of listing, this is where you're going to choose MLS or exclusive. This is where it does say cooperate or not cooperate with all other brokerages. So if you were to choose not to cooperate with other brokerages, that would mean that you are exclusive to Keller Williams. If you chose to cooperate, that means if someone sees your sign and their agent is with, you know, Royal LePage, that, you know, when they call you about that property, that you've chosen to cooperate so they can also view the home. So that's an important one to remember. I'm going to jump onto the other side here with sales tax. So sometimes, so depending on what, if you're typically only doing residential, then you're normally going to not have HST. If it's a income property, if it's a land, then it's possible that it may have HST. It's not our job to decide if there's HST to it. This is an area where you're going to want to have them contact their accountant, have them contact their lawyer to see if that specific property is going to be subject to HST. As the agent, you are not able to determine whether it is or isn't. So any questions about that? No? I'm just making sure I didn't forget a note here. Just give me a second. I think that's good. So no questions so far. Okay. Down here under section 8, this is also something that you're going to want to discuss with your client, competing offers, especially right now. The seller does or does not direct the designated agent to inform competing parties that they're competing. I can only think of one instance in my 14 years that I have actually had my client, once I've explained it, say that they don't. And it was, you know, not necessarily my recommendation, but it is the right to say that they don't want people to know. Obviously, most of the time you're going to check off does, which then requires you to make sure that all people understand that there's an offer in place. And that's your job. In a multiple offer situation, it's your job to make sure that if you have an offer in your hand and then you have Bob Smith, who showed the house, says he's going to write an offer, he needs to know. If you get the second offer, then the first person needs to be told that you now have two, so that they're competing. So that's an important one. Like I said, especially right now, I know a lot of areas are in this situation with lots of offers. So you do have to be very careful. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Remuneration. This is something if they've chosen to hire you, you've already had this discussion with them. Flat fee is sometimes commonly used in mini homes. It could be used in land as well. Not so common with residential sales. Obviously, it's usually, you know, your 2.5%. You should probably, I know it says it right here, plus HST. Your clients may not notice that. I think it's important. The HST on the commissions, it's a pretty big chunk of money sometimes. Make sure they understand that the commission that you're charging is subject, it is going to have HST on it. Same, the sharing of remuneration, obviously you're going to put that on. I think the other one to discuss with them too over here is 10.3, 10.4 about the interior photos. They're giving you permission to publish the photos that you've taken. So if they don't, well, I don't know how you would market it, but the seller authorizes the buyer brokerage to take interior photos. That's something that you'll want to discuss with your clients. You are they okay with a buyer walking through and taking photos of their home on their own? Sometimes they're doing it. I know prior to this even being in there, I know people would do it if they were military and they were looking at, 15 houses, one day and 10 the next. It was something that would remind them of which property it was if they liked something. But now you have to be very careful when you're showing houses. I know I'm trailing off, sorry. When you're showing houses, to make sure that you look at that listing cut to make sure that it's whether or not it says yes or no. So that if your buyer pulls their phone out when you're showing that house, that you can say, oh, I'm sorry, but the sellers have asked that we don't take interior photos. So that's important discussion to have with them. Honestly, most of the time, my clients say no. And, I don't really blame them. If the home was vacant, then they might be like, well, there's nothing in it, so go for it. Otherwise, people could be nervous about where those photos could end up. And, maybe they didn't listen and they didn't depersonalize everything. And, next thing you know, there's a picture of their family or something out there. So it's a discussion you want to have, and it's a security measure that's important for them to know, that because they're choosing a professional realtor to help them sell their home, that it's something that we think about and that we consider and that we think it's important to talk to them about. I don't think there's a whole lot more in this that is, down here, of course, your listing addendum, which we don't have to go through the listing addendum, and we probably are all aware it's kind of a checklist. A lot of the same information that you're putting in your SDBA is going to translate into your price and stuff like that. But this is important to make sure that you have your PCDS, if it's PDS, sorry, filled out, or your equipment schedule, and that it's going to be attached, that you make sure you check those items off. And any questions at all about filling out the seller brokerage agreement? No. You guys are so smart. I'm going to go back to our agenda right quick. Make sure I didn't forget anything.
Can I ask a quick question about multiple offers?
Sure.
If I have an accepted agreement and then I have another agent called to ask for a showing, do I have to tell him that I have a signed agreement or no?
Yes.
I do.
Yep. So you have an accepted offer and that agent still wants to show your property?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to tell them.
You have to tell them. Okay. No, I don't have to wait until they say they want to write an offer. I have to tell them immediately.
Right, because that means if you have an accepted offer on that property, that means that agent is showing the property knowing that he can't even write an offer, even if his clients love it.
Right. Okay.
Because you have an agreement in place, yeah. The other thing too to keep in mind, since you asked that question, is that if you have an agreement, let's say you found, you have showings on Wednesday, but you came to an agreement on Tuesday evening. But let's say you had prior to you accepting that offer, you had 3 showings on Wednesday. It's very important that you let those people who you've already confirmed the viewing, you need to let them know. I know you're scheduled to show the home, but just so you're aware, we do have an accepted offer on the property now. They need to have the opportunity to cancel.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they could still go see the property and they could write a backup offer.
That's true if they're interested, but you have to let that agent make that choice with his client. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you absolutely can. Yeah, you can still show it as long as your clients are fine with that. But you just need to make sure that agent knows that that's the situation he'd be in.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No problem.
I have a question about pricing.
Okay.
Now, with this crazy market, people are pricing the property and then they're holding off all the offers for a certain date.
Mm-hmm.
This seems to be the norm at the moment.
Yes, it does. Yep.
Is that advisable or not?
So,
and are they putting a lower price to asking a lower price to create more interest?
they could be, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as what you have to remember is that when you're working with a buyer showing the properties, or you're working with the seller, you have to make sure you are clear on your position. So the agents that are doing that, they're working for the seller, and it's in the seller's best interest to get the most amount of money that they can for the property. That's your job when you represent the seller, right? Is to get your seller the most amount of money that's possible. It is allowed. I know it may feel like it seems wrong, it is allowed. It does have to be disclosed. So, and I can tell by what you're saying, you're seeing it written in the realtor instructions, all offers to be received by blah time. So they are, by doing that, they actually are trying to make it fair. They're trying to make sure that everyone is aware when offers will be presented, so that everyone has time, should they choose to submit that offer. And it's actually a very good thing. And it is required. You do have to do that. In this situation, I think you're seeing it more because everybody's trying to just keep an open book, right? So when you meet with your buyer to go see that property where, they're allowing viewings for 3 days and then presenting offers, it's allowing your client the opportunity. Otherwise, what would happen is someone would go through that property, the first person would just make an offer and no one else would even get in, right? And that's not going to feel very fair either.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we had one last week, 30 offers.
Yeah.
And we offered 20 above asking, and it was like, oh my God.
I know. It is crazy. I had one the other day that had 8.
Yeah. And then we had another one that we had 5, but we won that one.
Oh, well, at least you won.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But we're paying 20 above asking.
I think it would be, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to just make a note of it, because I think it would probably be a very good, sorry, I'm just going to check on my puppy there. It would probably be a very good time to have a class about just this, about, multiple offers, because we are seeing it more. It can be frustrating. I know it feels like it's not frustrating for the seller, but it is. It's a lot. Like the property that I had 8 showings on, we had 48 viewings in 48 hours.
Wow.
Like, so knowing what the market is like right now, and, if you're working for the seller, you need to make sure that they understand that. Like I explained it to mine, and what they decided, we're just going to go to our cottage for 2 days, because that's a lot to get in and out. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would never have been home all day, and it's still limited as to what they can muck about and do. So when you're, and I'm just flipping it back to the seller thing, but when you're representing the seller, those are conversations in the world we're in right now that you're going to want to have with them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to pricing it, again, I think a CMA thing is important. But I mean, it's hard for us to put the value on what that property may or may not be worth, which is why you're seeing what you feel to be as though it's underpriced. What it really is.
No, I'm not saying that they're underpriced. I'm thinking that they're fair price. But if you're going to have people offering 20 above asking, how are the buyers ever going to recover that money? Unless the prices continue to go up with this market, nobody knows.
No, you're right. That's exactly right.
So how do you advise the buyer?
Well, if they want to be in the market, this is the market. And we all know that, and we've all, I'm sure, heard the saying, a house is worth whatever a buyer's prepared to pay.
Yeah.
Right now, if buyers are prepared to pay that, what happens in the future, we don't know.
Yeah.
And we can't predict it. I remember, I can't remember the year, but when the shipyard thing got announced, prices went crazy. Mm-hmm. Prices went speculatively crazy. And then we all know that didn't turn into what I think HRM had expected it to turn into. And people did lose money. Having discussions if you're representing the buyer, having discussions with your buyer and making sure that they understand that it's uncertain right now, it is important. You can't tell them that it could be bad. It could be good. Prices may continue to go up. You don't know. We don't know. But making sure that they're comfortable, making sure that they understand the uncertainty, which, I mean, I can't imagine there's too many people out there that don't understand the uncertainties, right? With the interest rates low, even if they do overpay, or what we feel as though is overpaying, with interest rates very low, maybe the hit won't be as hard. I mean, maybe interest rates are going to go through the roof. I mean, who knows? But if you try to take the, and I know it's hard, but if you try to take the COVID out of it, this has happened before, and it will continue to happen. It's just the way the market goes. I know we don't experience it as much here in HRM as they do in other provinces.
Yeah, like Toronto and Vancouver, this is probably the norm.
Yes, it is. Absolutely it is. Yep. So maybe we don't get it here very often, but you know what? It does happen, and anything could happen. You could pay less than the list price, and in a different market, and interest rates could go through the roof, or we could still end up in a huge recession, or anything could happen. So I think that having that discussion with your buyers is important, but also, again, if you're representing the seller, explaining to the seller the way the market is right now, that you may want to consider, or they may want to say, you know what, I've got kids, I'm not doing viewings after 7 o'clock. I've got to get them to bed, and I won't be out of my house all day. I'm sorry, I won't. In that case, you're going to want to be clear and be upfront so that everyone's aware we're only allowing viewings from 10 until 6. And in that case, in this market, you may want to have it on for 5 days. Your job when you represent the seller is to get as many people through. So if you're representing the seller and you get 10 offers or 30 offers, you've done your job for them. That's your job, is to help them and get them through it. But making sure that you have a lot of discussions around the way the market is currently right now with your sellers, that is very important. Like that was a great question to bring up, because that is right now with the way things are, it's difficult. And it's also, I know when you're in a buyer's shoes and you're sitting waiting to see if your offer gets accepted, that's stressful. But let me tell you, it's not so easy to present 8 offers or 10.
No.
Can you imagine presenting 30 offers?
I know, what a nightmare.
Especially if you have a seller who has, potentially never sold a property, let's say,
Yeah.
and you're, A tip, I guess, if that I've used, and everyone could give you, I'm sure, other tips, but when I had 8 on one and 7 on another, and like I said, I'm sorry, I'm paper, I'm old school, but my clients are both older too, so they kind of like that. So that was good. But I just took a piece of loose leaf and I put, offer 1, offer 2, offer 3, and I put in the things that are most important to the seller, which we all know is probably going to be price, closing date, inclusions.
Yeah.
Right? Those are going to be your 3 main ones. And then something else that as the agent we need to be looking at is deposit or length of time of the conditions, right? So that's a nice way to make it a little bit easier for them. I kind of picked one offer and went through all of the details of that offer and then said, okay, so now that you know that all of these offers have all of these things in common, here's what they don't have in common, and you can kind of focus on that.
Yeah.
And I think we have a class coming soon on presenting an offer.
Okay.
So there'll be a great twist with that. That would be a great one to watch, especially right now, because I'm sure that the multiple offer thing is going to come into it, and I'm sure that whoever's doing that training will probably have other tips too. But that is important. Your job when you're working for your seller is to try and make it as clear as at the least amount of stress possible, right? Like they're paying us a significant amount of money, and they're doing that. Like, even if we just go back to gathering the information, they're doing that. They're paying for our professional services, but they're also paying to make it stress-free, as stress-free as you could, possibly make the selling process be. I know right now for sellers, it's all, woohoo, I got 8 offers, 10 offers. But it can still all be very stressful. And our job, we have to remember, is to try and take the stress out. And in doing that, in kind of coming back into what we're learning about with preparing the listing, that's so important. I can't tell you how many times I've went and met with a client and said, you know what, you're so close. I know you're so close to being ready to list, but you know what, there's no point in jumping the gun until you have your taxes, until we have your house finished being painted. It's important to prepare them so that when they do go on the market, you've got everything. That's going to make it as stress-free as possible, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, so I'm very, very new to all this, and so I've only experienced the market as it is right now.
Okay.
So this is probably kind of a very obvious question, but in other markets, how often, how frequently do you get only one offer on a property?
Most of the time.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. This is rare. I've done it for 14 years. When I first got into it, it was a tight market. It wasn't this crazy, but there would be lots of times that you may be competing with one other offer, right? So right now I know you're competing with a lot of other offers, right? It won't stay this way. I can tell you that. You're going to go into, I mean, 5 years ago, you had houses sitting on the market for 6 months, and you were dreading the idea of having to call them and be like, we got to do another price change. I know we just did that 3 months ago, but here we go again. So you're going to experience a lot of different markets, and they're all going to be stressful in their own way, right?
I've done this 18 years and I've never had such a market where we have so many competing offers. You can't get in the door fast enough.
No, I know.
Showings are limited. Normally you have a relaxed 1 hour. Your client says, yeah, I think this is it. And then you can go and write your offer. And sometimes you can leave your offer open 24 hours. But now you've got, tight time limits and go as clean as possible. Like, we haven't had a market quite like this.
No, me either.
In the
Not
18
this bad.
years I've done this, so.
Yeah, when you're showing the property, your buyers really don't have time to think about it. Like, drive home, and by the time you get home, you better let me know. That's how much time you have. Yeah, I know it is crazy, but you know what? It's a nice market to be in when you're new, but it's difficult. I know, because if you're unfamiliar with some of the forms and some of the different things, it can be stressful. But you know what, I'll tell you, if you're in a situation you don't know, reach out to your broker team. Like, we're here. I don't mind. If you need help, I can help you, walk you through, how to make an offer look very good when you're competing. As I'll tell you, there's a lot of ways. Of course, it's probably going to come down to money. I get that. But there's a lot of ways to also make your offer look very good, very clean. So if you're ever being new, I know that this is tough. If you're ever in a situation, you're like, oh my God, just call us, because we can walk you through it. We can help you through it. You'll learn a lot. And then the market's going to change and you'll be like, damn, I just learned how to do all that.
Well, I'm glad that I'm getting into it with the market being like this, because I think, steep learning curve.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy that I'm currently my mother's assistant and going through the course. So I'm kind of, as I'm learning, I'm doing. So yes. I'm not licensed yet. I'm almost there, but.
That's great though. And it's great that you're doing all of these types of courses before. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, you'll be fine. And the market will change. Personally, I think I'd rather be in this market than in the price reduction market, which I think, Nicole, you remember the 5 years ago when you were like, price reduction up the yin yangs, all you did all day.
Yeah. And you would have a house, when you list it, it was priced well for that market. And if it has any quirks or something that may not appeal to every buyer, you're having to do a reduction and then to reflect that moving market. So it was like following the target. But yeah, I'd much rather this market where you price it well. And as you said earlier, buyers will pay what they want for that house.
Yep.
So, I dread going back to the days of having to always reduce or
I know, but we know it's going to come
to reflect something that the house has that may not be appealing to other buyers. So
that's right. It's tough for buyers, but keep in mind, if you're representing the seller, it's great. And you know what? Listings are extremely down, and it is a great time to reach out to someone who's been on the fence. Depending on their motivation for moving, they may very well make a lot of money right now, and be very happy with that, right? So that's a very important thing to remember. Another really important thing to remember with this, and I know it's extremely important that, and it's like the last thing on our agenda, but your client, once you've signed all of this, you need to make, if you've done it dot loop, it doesn't matter. You need to make sure your clients have a copy of it all. They need to have a copy, so important. They need to have a copy. And I think that people forget that. It can be PDF and email is how I prefer to do it. But you know what? keep in mind that you're gonna have, maybe you've never, but you will have clients that don't want to do email. And I'm not sure how you would present 30 offers and have somebody dot loop sign it anyway, because I can't personally, but like I said, I'm not techie. I can't imagine presenting 30 offers via discussion on the phone. I just couldn't. So you do have to make sure that they have a copy of the of this agreement that you filled out with them. And you know what? It also doesn't hurt, and to make sure you read through the entire agreement. There's going to be certain things you're going to point out and explain to them, like we discussed. But make sure you understand everything, because sometimes you'll be sitting there and that client is going to have a quick glance and they're going to ask you a question about a clause in there that you don't understand, and then you're going to be like, I'm not sure. So it doesn't hurt to read it. And then if you've read it and you're like, okay, I don't understand this, this, and that, then reach out and ask us, what does this mean exactly? So that you can understand how to explain it to your people.
Can I just throw in here that
Yeah.
buyers or sellers that, whether they're experienced or ones that have maybe been in their home for 50 years and they haven't been through this process in a very long time, you have to remember they're hiring you and your expertise. So I find to still have that personal interaction, they have the confidence and to see you there in person going through, even if it's one offer, they feel more confident and more relaxed about going through the process, especially if it's a person who's just lost their spouse and they're having to do it on their own. So by doing everything over the phone or by, signing online through .loop or DocuSign, that's great and works for people who are experienced or young and techie and so on. But the older people, they still really like the face-to-face.
Agreed. Yep. Agreed. 100%. 100%. And of course, we're all, sole proprietors. We're all, we all have our ways of doing things. And, I'm with you. That's one of the things that I like and that my clients like, and what you offer, you'll attract. So if you're more technical, then maybe you're going to attract more of those technical people who are like, this is great. All I got to do is talk to my agent. She explains it on the phone. Boom, I sign it up. But you do have to be careful when you're doing it that way, that they make sure that they understand what they're signing and that you've went through it with them. I know if I do a dot loop, I would be sending this to them in an email, and I'd be saying, okay, we'll have a chat. I'm going to walk you through it. And then as long as you have no questions and I've explained it, then I'll send it to you for signing. So you do have to be careful, even if you're going to be doing it all via dot loop. It's not just a matter of I'm going to fill it out and flip it off and you're going to sign it. You do still have to present it, and you do still have to make sure that they understand it. So that is important. Sign installation, natural gas, because you can't, you can't dig. So you have to make sure that there's permission for that. Obviously, if you put your signs up yourself, great. If you have a sign person, then, I guess we have a sign person that we use. So set your expectations for that too, because sometimes it's one of the things I'm guilty of forgetting to let them know that, I have a guy that's going to come and do that. I'm going to order that, but it may take 24 or 48 hours. So keep that in mind. And keep in mind too that, your sign can go up, sometimes I'll order it up the day before I'm going to be on MLS, just so that I make sure it's going to be there, right? And then your marketing. I don't think there's too much to go over with that. Again, it does say, make sure everything's in accordance with the rules. Of course, your signs and everything have already been approved by the brokerage. You do have to make sure of that. And again, like if you go onto the dashboard there, you can see the rules. So it's not a bad thing to familiarize yourself with. But if you're really stumped about something specific, then obviously you can give us a call. You also have to make sure that you're with the online, I'm not using the right word, online rules, or like, Facebook and all that stuff. They have rules as well. So keeping track of showings, feedback, and discussing them with your clients and agents. That's obviously important. And again, I think we mentioned it earlier, when you're explaining showings to your clients, make sure that you let them know that they won't get feedback right away. And then when you give the feedback, sometimes you're going to get great feedback and you're going to be able to share it with your client. And, in this market, I guess it may not feel so applicable, but trust me, it will become applicable again. If they say, oh, I walked in and all I could smell was wet dog or cat pee, it can be tough, but you need to make sure that you have those discussions with your clients so that you can, get the house sold and, be honest with them in a gentle, lovely manner. So that's pretty much covers, I don't think I forgot anything, but kind of pretty much covers preparing for a listing. I know it's kind of a lot of information. Like I said, I would, and again, I know I'm probably old school and some of you are like, what? I have a sheet that I just, did up so that I make sure I don't forget anything. And it's, I use that a lot. And, I mean, you could have it on the computer and tick it off, but I just prefer to have it, in my hand on a piece of paper. And I use it right there when I'm with the client. Okay, we've got this, we've got that, we did this, we did that, so that you make sure you don't forget anything, because it is kind of a lot of information to go over with them, and you're asking them to gather, like if they're on well and septic, do you have well and septic certificates? When's the last time you had your furnace serviced? You want to go through, so many things with them that if you don't have some form of a checklist and you can keep it all up here, hats off to you, but I know I can't. It's a lot to remember to go over with them. And you don't want to forget anything, because these are all questions that once that house is listed, you're gonna get asked, and if you get an offer and in that offer it says, well, we want to have the heat pump serviced, but you've already discussed with your client that it was just serviced. Therefore, that you can counter it and say the heat pump was serviced 3 months ago, receipt will, receipt included, or receipt, attached, or whatever. So it can make the entire process go easier if you make sure you have everything in order. So that pretty much covers it off. If you guys, if you want to have if you have any questions about any of this, shoot away.
I have a question. I'm a brand new agent pretty much, and I've dealt with a buyer client. We had a transaction just closed, but I have somebody that might be a seller client coming up. Okay. So I'm pretty good with the paperwork in that. I did well through the course with that, so I'm feeling pretty confident, but I really have no idea how to do a CMA. And, when we were in the course, you've got sort of a little grid in front of you and you do your adjustments with pencil and a calculator. What's the usual method for doing a CMA? Is it Cloud CMA or the other one through Paragon? Because that one really seemed cumbersome and confusing.
I'm probably the worst person to ask that too. But I think a lot of people do use Cloud CMA. Okay. Do you know when you might be going to do your appointment?
Well, I had sort of it's actually somebody I know, a friend, and so I've had a couple of preliminary discussions, and I did a walk around and kind of got information, upgrades and the usual things, what's changed. But I played with the CMA a little bit, and it's a very unique property, so that's another challenge that I'm out in the valley, and it's a very unique property, so there's not a lot of comparables. I did come up with a few, but again, I feel like I need to do adjustments, and I'm just a little lost on that.
I'm going to I'll check and see when we're going to have the CMA class. I know I don't use Cloud CMA. Does anybody on this group, use the Cloud CMA?
I have used it.
Yeah.
And I am in the same boat as David. When it asks for adjustments, and no one seems to be able to tell me, is there a standard adjustment for a half bath or a fireplace or a pool or whatever? No. I'm at a loss as well.
I know. I don't use the Cloud CMA when I'm doing mine. I would use comparable solds. Sometimes you have to go back a year. That's how I would do mine. I would pick and choose based on style. So if I was in Sackville, I do a lot in Sackville. So if I'm in Sackville and I'm in Millwood, I'm going to pull down solds for the last year in that sub district. So I can put in area 25, and then I can put in F for Millwood, and I'll see what's sold, and then I'll be able to pull out what's comparable to that house. So I'll pull out all the bungalows if that's where I am, or I'll pull out all the split entries. The plus and minus part of it, I don't think that there's an actual guide. If there is, I would like one too. But I guess experience will teach it to you. and it is difficult to do. I'm not going to lie. When I first started doing this, a CMA could have taken me like almost all day. Even now, it still takes me it's what takes me the most amount of time, a CMA. So if you've spent a few hours doing it, don't think that that you're not good at it. That's what it takes. Like Nicole, you said you've been in it for 18 years. How long does it take you to do a CMA now?
Especially right now when there's very few houses to compare. There are times I have to go back almost a year and a half to find a comparable. But you're right, narrowing it down to the area and sub-district, keeping it within the same style homes, a bungalow, split entry. Try to narrow it down as much as that. If it does, I've always had the rule of thumb that if it is an extra bedroom, so let's say your comparables are 3 bedrooms and your house has a 4th, I was always taught that that's a value of about 10,000, especially if the window, if it's downstairs, is egress. A pool, it's only to the value of the
pool isn't
for a house that has a pool. Like sometimes it's really hard to price a house with a pool because not everybody wants to have one. So
yeah. So it still takes you a long time, though. You would say it still takes you.
Me. Yeah, it does. It does.
So it does take a while. So don't think that because you've spent hours, it's there's not really any kind of easy answers to it. The one thing that you do want to keep in mind is that it's going to end up being a kind of a square footage thing, right? And then sorry, my dog's just moving. I'm still going to talk, but and an upgrade thing, right? Like if you pull down a comparable and you see that yours has hardwood versus laminate, I guess the best thing I could suggest would be to consider, if you were to buy a house and it had, I don't care if it had laminate or if it had carpet, and you were to put hardwood in, what would that cost? And you could, experience will give you some form of an estimate of that. I'm not saying you're going to be able to use the full estimate, because if one has brand new laminate and one has brand new hardwood, there is a value increase in that hardwood. The cost of laminate is far cheaper than the cost of hardwood. So you kind of have to gauge. I know, like, for example, a detached garage, like a double detached garage, say, you're going to add value of, is it finished inside? Is it heated? Does it have a heat pump? Does it have cable TV in there and an attic? But rule of thumb would be somewhere in the vicinity of probably 20, 15, anywhere from probably 15 to 30, depending on the interior. A bathroom, if it only has, one full bath and the next one had 2, what would it cost for someone to put a bathroom in the house that doesn't have one? Again, you kind of have to gauge it down a little. If a brand new bathroom, I'm not talking like granite countertops and, all of that kind of thing. I'm just talking the basics. The basics of a bathroom would probably cost you at a very minimum of $5,000. To add a half bath is probably, only putting in a toilet and a sink, right? So, maybe 2,500 or 3,000. It is difficult. I think it's something that you can reach out and ask specifically for some help with it if you need to. But I do know that when Anne taught this class that we had discussed maybe a CMA class, in the near future, which obviously you guys would probably take a lot away from that. Everybody does their CMAs different. And, you kind of have to play around with Paragon. I'm a big stats person. So, I obviously have to use comparables too, but I am a big stats person on, average days on market and things like that. So it just depends on where you're comfortable explaining things. Probably doesn't really help you.
Well, now with this crazy market, how do you even do a CMA when people are paying 30 above asking?
Well, you can't factor that in unless you have a comparable that suggests it. So the market that we're in right now, where you're seeing the prices selling for 20 or 30, those are going to be comparables that are going to be used probably, over the next little while.
Yeah.
But slowly, because how many are there? In a specific area, listings are down so much that in a specific area, you're probably only going to have 2 where that actually happened. And then you're going to have 6 where it didn't. It's an individual choice. I know with you have to price it based on, what the comparables sold for. So,
Do
you know,
you
in a
take
year,
those
we're going to
out of
see a
the
huge
equation?
difference.
So
What
do
was
you
that?
take these ones out of the equation that are going for over asking and multiple offers?
No, not necessarily. No, they need to be presented. You need to show
Yeah.
your seller what's potential to happen, but you also have to be careful and show them what the list price was and versus what that buyer paid. So you're going to have access to showing them, you know, it was listed for $229.9 and it sold for $260. You're going to be able to show them, and you're also now and in future going to be able to explain to them that the market was, you know, so low in listings at the time that this is what happened. You know, that you can't control whether or not that's the case with their house. So, I mean, you'd still, you know, and why wouldn't your client price it at 230 and potentially get 260? So you're going to have
Yes.
those discussions with your seller and see where their comfort level is with that. We are probably going to start to see people say, you know, well, my neighbor's house sold for 40,000 above the ask price, so why can't I list it at that? That's going to come down to how you choose to run your business and how you, you know, what your seller wants to do and if you're comfortable with it. Really, I've been still pricing mine according to comparables, and you know, most of us aren't going to have a lot of comparables with these crazy prices yet, because I know it's happening a lot, but we got to keep in mind that listings are still down over 40% in HRM and sales are down. So you're only going to have so many of those examples. So hopefully that helped. I think it sounds like a CMA class would be great. So I'll reach out to the broker team and let them know that that's something that you guys are kind of asking for. Does anyone have any other questions?
I do.
Okay.
Sherry, what do you do? What do you think about selling your own house?
What do I think of that? You have to remember that if you choose to sell your own house, and I really hope that this is 100% correct, but your E&O insurance doesn't cover you.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'm 99% certain, but it may have changed. So
I'm going to be listing a
double check.
property. I'm going to be listing a property that is owned by an agent for that very reason.
Okay,
because of E&O, but also for liability. So if there's anything that you know, we fill out the PDS and so on to the best of our knowledge and so on as a seller. But if anything comes back, then she's liable, and they would throw basically for her. She's like, I just want hands off. I'm a seller, and acknowledge that the seller is a licensed agent with NSAR.
You do have to make sure, from a broker perspective, if you do choose to sell your own property, you do have to disclose that. You absolutely have to put in there that the seller holds a license with well, you'd have to spell it out with NSREC. And yeah, absolutely. And if you have a spouse or someone that's on it with you, like, you know, I think it's your choice. I would probably, if it's something that you're considering, I think I would probably tell you to run it by Anne. She's our broker on title, so she has the say. And she would also be able to give you a lot more information. Knowing that your insurances don't cover you, if something comes back on you, if you're prepared for that, then I'm not sure. Maybe our office has something special to the effect that, you know, they don't like you to. I'm not sure. Okay. I've never had to do that, but I can tell you I would certainly do it.
So I have another question. When you're listing your house exclusively, don't you have to put a little sign above it saying exclusive, and then as well as the MLS being, you know?
No, you don't have to. No.
Okay.
You don't have to put exclusive rider. I know that's what you mean. It's not going to hurt. What you do have to make sure is that you've covered up the MLS logo. Otherwise, you don't have to.
Right.
But you can put the rider on it, but you don't. You're not required to.
Yeah, there's just a house that's down the street with a sign, and I can't find it on MLS.
Did you call?
I didn't.
That's what you need to do. I would call the agent. I've seen it happen with buyers before, where they call me and they're like, oh my gosh, there's a house on blah, blah, blah street. It's right where we want to be. Why didn't it come up? I'm like, well, you know, the sign can be up. The sign's allowed to be up 48 hours before the listing's activated. So it could just be that the sign guy got it up there early. I always drive by. I would always call that agent and just say, you know, hey, it's
All right.
Sherry with Keller Williams.
Okay.
I saw your house. What's up? You know, because
Yeah.
maybe it is exclusive and maybe they are prepared to cooperate. Maybe not. I don't know. I would call.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions about anything to do with preparing your listing?
No, until I started doing it, I then I'll have 1,000 questions.
Well, if you start doing it and you have questions, then reach out. Absolutely,
Okay.
we can totally help you. I think once you get a few of them completed, once you've done a few, I know when I was new, you know, I could refer if I needed to, and I know pricing and things are going to be different for each listing, obviously. But I know I would refer back to the one I did, right? So if you reach out to one of the brokers to ask you, you know, to ask for some help in filling it out, then you'll have it and you'll know it was filled out correctly. And then the next time, if you have a question, you'll be able to just kind of look back and be like, oh yeah, right, this is what I did last time.
Okay.
A lot of the tick boxes that are in the agreement are things you have to discuss with them, right? Like the competing offer situation, the interior photo situation, the commission. If you kind of pull it down and read through it, you'll realize that it's actually very straightforward. You just have to give yourself some slack there and read it. And if you read through it and you have questions, highlight them and call us and we can help you. You know, obviously you're working with a realtor is another whole thing, but it's obviously something you're going to have signed as well, right? Along with your addendum and your property disclosure statement. But yeah, if you're filling it out and you have questions, that's what we're here for. So don't hesitate. I mean, you can also send us an email if you feel as though it's something that could be answered in an email. You know, we're here.
Great. Thanks, Sherry.
Yeah, no problem. Anything else? You know what's going to be interesting is to figure out how I end this. Because usually I just leave the meeting, but that's okay. I'll figure it out. Just boot the whole computer off if I have to. So if there's no other questions, then I thank you guys. And hopefully that helped you and hopefully you got some tidbits of information. And if anything, if you have anything else, you know, if you ever have any questions, then, you know, we're here to answer them. If you're in the middle of a deal, then just reach out.
Just one other question because I missed the first 7 minutes or something.
Okay, sure.
Do we get a copy of this?
The agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can send you a copy of the agenda.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's
good idea.
in
It's just-
Weebly or not, but you know, absolutely. If you feel as though a copy of this would help you remember that you need to search online and search PBSC. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Shoot me off an email and I'll fire it off to you in a PDF because I don't know if it's in Weebly. So, and I have it right here. So yeah, if anybody else wants one, just shoot me off an email.
I don't have your email address.